Hello, welcome to Nerdwana. Welcome to Nerd Saturdays. In this edition, I'm bringing you some core JavaScript principles, some core JavaScript nuances, like basic fundamentals. Also, a new mic. I had this mic since I think I'm too close to it. The mic. Hello. Yes. So I had this mic for about 3 to 4 years now, but I just brought this baby back to life recently. So yeah, enough about this. Let's just get right into it. Some ASMR. Yeah. So what is the philosophy to befriend JavaScript? So JavaScript is like that quirky little friend of yours, which takes a lot of time and effort to actually like that guy. But once you like that guy, you kind of become his best friend. He's like Chandler. When Chandler tells that he's very lovable and likable once you get to know the guy. So JavaScript is exactly like that. You have to accept the language for its quirks and whatever it comes with to fall in love with the language itself, because it does so many magical things for you guys, okay, behind the scenes. And I think that is exactly what I've written as well. If you ever want to be good friends with anyone, never set any expectations. If you want them to react or behave in a certain manner, you will never be able to develop a good equation with them. So this is philosophical. JavaScript is actually questioning our philosophies. Like, yeah, when you make friends, this is the philosophy that you're supposed to go on with. And this is exactly the philosophy that I need from you all when you are making friends with me. If you accept them for who they are, their quirks and everything included, then you will really appreciate the magic they bring into your lives. And JavaScript is purely magical. I think since the days I even started programming, I have touched base with many programming languages here and there, Java, Python, and stuff like that. But C, C++. But I never kind of fell in love because JavaScript really questioned my beliefs about some things. So it made me naturally more curious, and that's how I started it. Okay, static versus dynamic website. Everybody knows this, not a new concept. You can always make some plain static websites using pure HTML, CSS. JavaScript is the one that adds dynamicity, a great user experience, dynamicity to your website. When I say dynamicity, what does it mean? Dynamicity is like things are changing. For example, if you see a photo of mine 2 years ago, you won't even believe the person who is standing in front of you right now, because I'm growing. I'm a dynamic creature. Okay, so JavaScript makes a web page dynamic. For example, if you open a web page today, maybe for 4 days later, you are being displayed some different content. Why? Because JavaScript is acting behind the scenes, fetching some data, adding new data, removing data. So that is a dynamic website, and JavaScript adds dynamicity to your website. I think, yeah, that is what I have written as well. How does JavaScript affect your web application? Great user experience. You can add custom logics, what should happen when you do something, and stuff like that. Interacting with other parts of applications that are not local to your setup, things like that. Adding interactivity, dynamic nature, and you can add custom logics. Who birthed the language? Who pushed it out of the system? It was Brendan Eich. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. It was Brendan Eich. And it took him 10 days to prepare the initial draft of JavaScript. Like, how big of a genius do you even have to be to prepare a draft of a new language in itself within the first 10 days? That's a new level of genius. So that is the one who gave birth to the language. I think it's Brendan Eich, right? Yes, he's a ninja, really, man. So it was initially named Mocha. Then it was changed to LiveScript, and to capture the audience that was popularizing on Java, it was named to JavaScript. It got into a lot of trouble after that because whatever, Oracle now owns Java, and they sort of try to mandate things in JavaScript as well. So not the best choice. So nowadays it's being called ECMAScript, but nobody calls that unless you are a psychopath. Nobody ever says I'm learning ECMAScript. So maybe you do. Maybe you do. I don't know. I'm not judging. I am. how does JS code run? I don't remember the answer that I typed. Basically, JS code is runs line by line. It is not a compiled language; it's an interpreted language. For any language to be understood by the machine, it needs to be converted into machine readable code, and I think that is what I've written here as well. Kind of machine understandable code. JS code can be executed anywhere there is a JS engine present. Oh, that's a nice topic. JS engine present. What is a JS engine? So JS engine is like your soul, your spirit. Everything that you are doing or want to do or however you feel is coming from inside. I don't want to get philosophical, but JavaScript gets me philosophical. So JS engine is the one actually that is running your code, parsing your code before it is running, creating. I think it's mom. Just a second. I'm back, but I don't remember where I was. I think I was on. I was telling about the JS engine, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, the JS engine is the one actually that is executing the code, creating the abstract syntax tree. Don't worry about it if you don't know about it. It's the one actually running your JS code in simple terms. What is ECMAScript? Did I miss that point or did I missed that point. So ECMAScript is the governing body which is laying out the rules and regulations that how JavaScript should behave in browser environments, in server environments. They are a specific sets of rules and regulations that ECMAScript or body releases frequently, that browsers are expected to incorporate in their offerings. There's a body, I think it's TS39 or something, which is actively kind of working on any new features, new requests or something like that. You can check out the code base, it's pretty cool. Yeah, who takes care of any new proposals? It's the TC39. Yup. How does JS code run? Yes, popular engines V8. Some of the popular V8 engines are V8 by Google. I think it is developed on top of Chromium, which is open source. Then there is SpiderMonkey, which is the work of Firefox. Microsoft is a different story. First it was IE, which was built on Chakra, and then Edge came. I think Edge also was initially started building on top of Chakra, but then realized that Chakra sucks. Then they also moved to Chromium wala V8 engine, I'm thinking. Or I think have a new name for it altogether now. What do they call it? What do we call it? I don't care. No, I don't care. Chakra. It was for I. What was Ryan Dahl's contribution to the JS ecosystem? So before the entry of Ryan Dahl, people knew who he was. To execute any JavaScript code, because JavaScript code was meant to run in the client side. Only the browsers were meant to execute it, because only websites catered to the thing. So what Ryan Dahl did was he recognized that browsers are just a environment. It is just a runtime environment, but the actual thing which is running the JavaScript code is the V8 engine. So what I can do is I can extract the V8 engine out from the browser environment, because the V8 engine and browser environment are not dependent. There is a separation of concerns. Browser creates a runtime environment which uses the V8 engine, but the V8 engine is not dependent on the browser, right? So what he did was he extracted the V8 engine that was open source. Then he kind of orchestrated a whole play where you could kind of run JavaScript in your own local machines, in your local setup. And that is what he called that wrapper as Node.js. He created his own runtime where you could use the V8 engine on your local machine and execute JavaScript code. Now that was really a remarkable moment in JavaScript history, because people who were just limited to writing JavaScript code on the front end could now write JavaScript code on the servers as well, in the back end as well, because now there is a separation now. JavaScript can run locally as well, so it expanded a lot of job opportunities for front end people. They were like, now we can do back end as well, and that is, I think, where the whole full stack thing began. Motherfucker localized this shit, yes. Earlier, the only place JS could run used to be in the browser engine, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Yes, good. Independent, yes. I think I discussed that. Browser deep dive. Are you guys ready to do a deep dive? I don't remember what I did. I think it's about how web APIs work and how he extracted it from the environment. I'm forgetting. Yes. So the JS engine itself is single-threaded. It can only execute one line at a time, but there are asynchronous operations. For example, when you need to interact with a server, it is a time-consuming process. So do you think that the JavaScript thread will wait for that thread to complete? That is not how it is designed. Even though it is single-threaded in nature, it can still perform asynchronous tasks. Is the engine the one that is performing the asynchronous tasks? Nope, not at all. What is happening is, for example, if you know of some certain web APIs like set timeout, set interval, fetch. So I talked about the browser runtime environment. So what the browser runtime environment incorporates is this V8 engine, which is running the JS code. It also has web APIs and the DOM. So it might have other things as well, but what I know, it has a DOM, which is a document object model. It has its own set of web APIs and it has the V8 engine. Now, how do these orchestrate together? For example, you have written some JavaScript code. It is executing line by line. It notices that this code is meant to be, this particular set of code is from the web API. For example, there is a set timeout mentioned in the code. What it will do is, it will be like, alright, this is a web API. I am not the one that is going to execute it, bro. That's on you. So what it will do is, it will delegate it to the web API thing. The web APIs are something that is provided by the browser. So browser has its own threads. The V8 engine is single threaded, but the browser has its own thread. So the browser will start executing the asynchronous task and push it in a macro task queue or macro task queue, whatever. We don't need to get into that. But the thing is, the V8 engine will continue processing the normal lines of code that you have written, and while it will delegate the task to the browser, ki bhai, these web APIs are provided by you, execute them at your own time, and whenever you're done with them, just tell me. That is a different topic, but I'm just telling that there is a separation of concerns. Like, this is what JS engine will execute, this is what the browser is supposed to execute. Separated browser threads, while later just go, how is your browser able to receive any external dependencies that you may have used in front-end project, blah 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 blah. So this is a doubt that I had. For example, because when I was doing server-side development, I had this doubt, like, I'm using all these external npm packages in my local. So I was like, okay, the node modules are present on my local, the server is running on my local. So obviously the engine can access those third-party libraries, these third-party packages, so they can use it in my code. But I was like, yeah, when I'm doing front-end development, so maybe I require some third-party library, but how is the browser runtime environment able to access the node modules which I downloaded in my folder when I was doing development? So then that is when I recognize that when you are, this is where bundlers come in. Basically, you bundle your application and send it to the browser. They are bundlers, they are build commands like npm run build or package or bundlers like v8. So what they do is, when they're shipping to the browser, they're able to they're intelligent enough to recognize ki acha, this is some of the external code that this guy has used. So let me pack this code as well before shipping into the browser, such that browser can, because browser will get the finalized product, it will get the final bundle and it will have everything, your external dependencies, everything. So that is why it is able to get those. Why is the script tag placed at the bottom of the body? At the bottom of the body, because the scripts can be asynchronous. It can be doing some very heavy overhead tasks and might take time. So as I told you, I think browser is executing one thing at a time. So it does not want that key even before the elements of the web page are loaded, it is executing the script and the user is seeing a white screen. So that is why we place the script tag at the bottom to reduce the perceived load time. So once all the elements in the browser are loaded, they will get displayed, and in the last the script can execute. And it will also ensure that if the script depends on some elements that are in the HTML, they are also loaded, or else you'll see unnecessary bugs. What are variables? What are variables? Variables are just placeholders for values. Variables are just placeholders for value. There are two types of variable. Variables can store data. There are two types of data types: primitive types and reference types. Reference types, reference data types store the memory location of where the data actually is, because the data of a reference type is living in the heap, and the address of that data lives in the stack, and that is what the reference data type holds. The primitive data type is supposedly holds the value itself, which is not true if you go under the hood. It also holds a label. For example, when the JavaScript engine is running and it sees a variable, it will figure out that this is a primitive data type, I need to go to the stack to this location and get the data from there. The data will always be stored in a whatever, but just for understanding purpose or as a wrapper purpose, you can think like variables can store primitive data types and reference data types. Primitive data types are primitive data types are stored in the variable itself. The variable itself holds the primitive data types. I think I explained just more. Labels for I told you earlier, just labels for memory. Why is JS called a dynamically typed language? Because whoever was designing JS, I think they had a philosophy: let's separate the variable from the data type it holds. The variable should only be interested in holding data. It should not be concerned about holding what kind of data it's holding, which is again a debatable topic. I don't like this behavior because it can lead to unnecessary bugs. But this is what dynamically typed language means, that JavaScript figures out dynamically, or it figures out on the fly, that what is the data type of that variable. It is not bound to any one particular type of data. Dynamically infers. Can we redeclare variables in JavaScript? And the answer is yes. There's a lot of flexibility that you can find with JavaScript. You can absolutely redeclare variables in JavaScript as long as they are used with the var keyword. As long as they're used with the var keyword. Then there's a deep dive coming. Underwater dive. What is hoisting? Why have hoisting at all, fam? It's gonna take time. I have time. It's Saturday. It's nerded out Saturday. What is hoisting? So informally, what is hoisting? For a person that does not know JavaScript or is new to programming languages, what do you mean by hoisting? So hoisting informally is the process where the JS engine, while parsing your code, moves your variables and functions at the top of the file. It is parsing through the code and it will identify all the variables and functions used, and it will hoist it or move it to the top of the file. That is an informal way. They are not actually being moved to the top. Now what happens formally, or really what happens is, as per my knowledge, before even a single line of code is executed, the JavaScript engine does a pre-pass. It does a pre-pass on the code base. It is doing a pre-pass. It is figuring out, acha, what variables have you declared? What functions have you declared? What is the scope chain inside that particular function or local scope? It is doing all of that thing. So while it is doing that, it is making a mental map, a mental model that acha, this is he has declared this variable, he has declared this variable. So this process is called hoisting. For example, if you have used some variables, it will register those variables into its memory. It will not initialize them. It will not initialize them with a particular value, but it will just create a mental model. That is what hoisting is. Okay. Let's talk a little more about hoisting. So when it is registering those things, so you know variables, right? Variables can be declared with either var, let, or const. So while it is hoisting var variables, so when it registers var, it by default initializes it with an undefined value. So even if you have declared and initialized var very below at the bottom of your code, but you're using it above, you will not get an error. Wherever the var you have used, the value that will be translated is undefined. That is what the hoisting will do. Will it do the same with let and const? I think there's somebody at the door. I apologize. Sorry. I always forget where I was. Yes, we were doing an underwater dive on hoisting. So what I was like that, in the hoisting process, when the JS engine is registering and mapping out the variables, all the var keywords it has, it will automatically initialize it with undefined. But that is not the same with let and const. That is not the same with let and const. Let and const were released in ES6 to not let that happen. ES6, the ECMAScript was like, you know, I'm getting a lot of unprecedented bugs due to undefined and the nature of the way var is hoisted. So it introduced a new concept of let and const, which were theoretically or technically hoisted, but rather than giving them a value of undefined, they were kept in the temporal dead zone. A lot of jargons here and there. So what it basically means is that before their initialization, if you have used them above, you will get an error. For example, if you've used const this in the code here, but you're using it over here, the JS engine will say, array, this is in the temporal dead zone right now. So the temporal dead zone will give you an error. If you have ever seen a reference error in variables, it might be the temporal dead zone at work there. So why have hoisting at all, fam? It's just how I think the JavaScript people designed JavaScript, that once defined in the current function scope, you can use it anywhere. It has its quirks. JS comes with a lot of quirks. Designed this way, I told you. It's designed this way. What the hell? For the nth time, I apologize. During the hosting phase, when JS is registering the var variables, it initiates. So what you can see is, for example, in this function scope, if I have, even though I've declared and initialized it in a nested block scope, but if you try to access this var over here, this whatever variable this is here, you will be able to see the output as defined. Even if you access it outside this block scope, in the function scope, which is the scope of var, you will not get an error. You will get an undefined value. Okay, if it was let and const, it would have been an error, a reference error, because it would have been in the TDZ. This is a global variable. This is globally scoped. For example, even if you've initialized it in a function scope, you can access it outside the function also. The crux being that you can only access it after initialization. You cannot be like, ki bhai, you have defined it here. When the function calls, then only it's defined, but you're trying to access it before the event. declaration or initialization itself, then it will give an error. I've talked about this. Weird design choice, which is an understatement for real. Seen the variable but has not initialized it yet. Yes, JavaScript engine knows that return cons hai. It has registered it but has not initialized it with undefined. Who birthed return cons? The ECMAScript. Exactly. TDZ. Okay. How many data types are there in JS? I think there are 8 data types in JS. Out of which I think 6 are primitive and 2 are reference types. So the reference types is object and maybe begint. I don't remember. The primitives are your number, string, boolean, undefined, null, symbol. That makes 6. Yes. So number is there, string, boolean, undefined. Undefined is a primitive type. Null, object, begint, and symbol. I'm not sure whether begint is a reference type or primitive type. Okay. So number, some basic things. How does the plus operator work? When there is an arithmetic operation, so it will perform the arithmetic operation, but one of the operands is a string, then it will perform concatenation. That's how it works. What are primitive types? String, numbers, boolean, undefined, symbol. That means begint is an reference type. So what are primitive data types in JS? The 6 of number, boolean, undefined, null, symbol, and whatever. So it is immutable. Primitive data types are immutable. When I say they're immutable, what I mean is that you cannot change them. I mean, you can change them, but you're not actually changing them. You're getting a new value itself from JavaScript. For example, you have a string hello. When you do hello.to uppercase, then what JavaScript engine is doing, it is not modifying the original string. It is creating a new string with all caps and it is giving it to you. That is just how the JS language grammar was designed, that you cannot mutate the variables. Reference types, however, are mutable. We'll get into that. What else do I have written about mutability and autoboxing? What is autoboxing? So you must have noticed that it is said that everything in JS is an object. Why is it said? Because even primitive data types sometimes display object-like behavior, because you can do a string dot to uppercase. So where is that to uppercase coming from? It is a method, right? It is a method, but where is it coming from? I understand that if it was an object, then it would have a prototype, and the prototype could have been of string, object type, whatever it is. But string is a literal. Why does it have the string methods? So what JavaScript engine does is, when it sees that you are trying to access a method on a primitive, it temporarily wraps the primitive into its object wrapper. For example, if it's a string, it will wrap in the string object wrapper. If it's a number, it will wrap in a number wrapper. So in that temporary time period, the primitive behaves like an object. It is made available the set of methods that the wrapper has, and this process is called as autoboxing. So the primitives are not objects themselves, but they can behave. JavaScript lets them behave like objects, which is called autoboxing. I just explained that. Temporary wraps, yes. What are reference data types? These are reference data types are complex data types which are stored in the heap, and their reference is stored in the variable which is itself on the stack. They are mutable. If you have ever played with JavaScript, you would have noticed that you can change the key, you can change the values of certain keys and play around. So basically, though, they are mutable. Non-primitive data type, stack, told you already, mutability hai, objects, array and functions. Arrays and functions are also objects under the hood. And functions are a special type of objects. They are callable objects. For example, when you declare a function with a name, so function has certain keys and values. It has a set of properties like name and what properties does it have? Does it have constructor property? I don't know. Whatever. Function does have some intrinsic properties. So it has an object like thing where it has keys and values. But when you do something like a function invocation, JavaScript under the hood understands that it is a callable. So it's not like when you're using the parenthesis, you're invoking a key or a value on the object. No. JavaScript object under the hood knows that this is a callable object. It will literally do a callable on that variable. Function are callable objects under the hood. It will do a callable. It's a very long article. TLDR callable objects properties होती हैं invocation के समय. It literally calls that. Happy coding. How can we create objects? There are a couple of ways. The most used and abused is the object literal syntax, the opening and closing parentheses. JavaScript engine is even optimized for that, even though there are multiple ways which I will tell you to create objects. Since so many people found it very intuitive and easy and faster to write the literal syntax, JavaScript actually even supports कि चलो भाई, let's use this only, let's optimize this one only because people are using it so much. The other one is the object constructor, the const obj equals to new obj. So what new obj does is it creates an object itself, and in the prototype it sets the object.prototype to it. The object literal also sets the same thing. It creates an object and sets the prototype as a default object.prototype. The object constructor is like, it has one additional step. It can take an argument. Now what is that argument? It can take an object as an argument and return a new object which is kind of allocated to the new variable. Okay. For example, you have a const obj is equals to whatever object, and then you have const obj2 equals to new obj where you pass in that obj. So what the new object will do is it will take that obj as a parameter. It will create a same replica object. New keyword will create a same replica object and set the prototype as the object.prototype and return the new object to the whatever variable you have initialized it with. The third is object.create. It is used for inheritance purpose, but it will also create the same thing only. If you don't pass any argument in object.create, then it will set the prototype as the object.default prototype. But if you pass in an object which has some properties sets in its own prototype, so what it's doing is it is creating a new object for you, brand new baby, but it will extract the prototypes of the object that you passed as an argument and set it into the new variable. So you inherited the properties of that object. You created a chain, you did some inheritance, and inheritance is very weird in JavaScript. It is very weird. It will kick you in the shins when you try to understand what is prototypes and how does the chaining work. It will make you cry. It made me cry. Literal syntax, new object and object.create. How can we remove certain properties from the object? The delete keyword. Delete keyword will not work on variables. It will work on the properties of object. For example, keys are immutable. Once you have defined a key for an object, you can change the value that is associated with the key, but you can't change the key. You can only delete it. If you want to, for example, you have a key like name, and now you want to change the key to F name. So you first have to copy the value from the key to copy the value, delete that key, and then initialize a new key with F name and with that value. So keys should be immutable. What are computed keys? For example, your key can be very weird. It might have spaces in between characters, but the grammar will not support that. So what you can do is you can wrap them in strings, and then you can set that string key as a computed key. Man of the match. It has spaces in between. You can't do obj.man of the match. obj.man के बाद space है, then of के बाद space है, तो JavaScript will give an error. So you wrap it in a key like this, and then you do something like this. So this is a computed key. Our key is unique in an object, definitely. Yep. Are arrays homogeneous? Is it a new question? Are arrays homogeneous? Arrays are not homogeneous. They can store any data type as long as that data type is understandable and exists in the JS grammar. Array will hold it for you. For example, in typical compiled languages like Java, C, C++, you have to first of all define what kind of data, the data type that you're going to store, int, string, whatever. JavaScript is like, I am free, whatever you want to store. How is it able to do that? Because under the hood, again, it's an object. What is an array? It is an object, and the indexes that the array has are basically keys. Those keys store the value. For example, you do arr of 0, you are doing arr.0. There is a 0 key that exists in that array object, and it holds a value. Now value can be anything. So that is why that value can be anything. So it is said that array can hold anything. Okay, yes. How do function arguments behave? When you define some parameters for a function, for example, it takes two parameters a and b. So how do they behave? They are variables, right? But what kind of variables do they behave like? Can you mutate them? Can you redeclare them? So how do they behave? So you can, for example, a function accepts two parameters a and b. So you can obviously reassign those values. Like for example, a equals to hello. Then you can later do a equals to bye. So that means a is mutable. You might be thinking, acha, that means the parameters behave like let variables. But they can also be redeclared. You can do like it is receiving a. You can do like where a equals to something. So you can redeclare as well. So they are not officially vars, but they display a lot of var-like behavior. Yes, you can do something like foo1, var foo1, and whatever. The weird equality behavior of nan, null, and undefined. Oh yeah, maza aayega. So let's first tap into the undefined and null. Okay, both are meant to be a placeholder for an absence of value. Both are meant to be a placeholder for an absence of value. But null is explicitly specifying that there is an absence of value. Undefined mein, it was not even specified at all by the developer. Null mein, the developer is specifying that this placeholder holds nothing. There is nothing out here. Undefined mein, the developer did not even, lazy developer, he did not even say ki bhai this is empty. A thing comes to my mind. For example, there are two friends of yours. So you ask him, bro, do you want to go to Goa? One person explicitly tells no, null, I am not going to Java. I'm not going to Goa. And the other person does not say anything. So JavaScript treats them both as same. Ki they are empty. One has explicitly told null, and one is not even defined at all. That is also a no value. But that no, that undefined no is very dangerous. You know, that friend that does not give an answer is the most, it's a brat actually. So undefined is a brat. For example, when you initialize a variable like let a and you leave it like that, JavaScript in hoisting will do what? It will do a equal to undefined. Whereas when you do let a is equals to null, it also means the same thing, that this placeholder holds nothing, but you've explicitly specified na ki it is null. If you just do let a semicolon, a is undefined. Okay, so that is why when you do when you do a equality check like undefined equal to null, JavaScript will give true, because they are both meant to be under the hood a placeholders for empty value. Undefined equal to null, they are empty. equal. But when you do a strict equality check, I'm gonna kill somebody today. Where was I? I was in the mysterious domains of null and undefined. When you are doing a strict equality check, the triple equals of null equal to undefined, then JavaScript will say false, because what? Triple equals checks the value as well as the type. So what is the type of null? It's an object. It's a different story altogether. But the type of undefined is undefined. The type of null is an object, and that is why you get a false, which makes sense also, kind of. Type of null. Let's not even get started on that. Why is type of null an object? It's a legacy bug in JavaScript. It's not a. People say it's a bug, but I understand why it's a null, because if you know anything about prototypes and you go to the last prototype is the object.prototype, and object.prototype ka prototype is what? It's a null. So it's like an object only. That's why I think the type of null is an object. But if anybody asks ki bhai, is null a primitive data type? It's a reference data type. Object hai, it's a primitive data type. Then you should answer it's a primitive data type, and you just say that it's a bug. Type of null is an object, it's a bug. कह के निकल जाओ वहाँ से. कौन भाई इतना पीछे पड़ेगा किसी के? Nan equals nan. अच्छा, what is nan? Nan, whatever. Nan is not a number. Nan is supposed to signify that something is mathematically going wrong. Whenever you do like Keshav divide by 5, it's like, what? It's not a number. Like, this is the result of an indeterminate arithmetic operation. What? It is the result of an indeterminate mathematical operation. 2 into Keshav, 2 plus sun. What is it? It will result in nan, not a number. It will not throw an error. JavaScript rarely throws an error. Bhai, kabhi to error throw kar do. It rarely throws an error. It has its own whatever. I always come back to the first point. What is the philosophy to befriend JavaScript? I remember that philosophy. I take a deep breath and then I start doing it again. Okay. So nan is generated when it is an indeterminate mathematical operation. For example, the square root of -1. It's a complex thing. It's a complex number. It's not a number. So that is why you get nan or nan. So nan should be equal to itself, right? If undefined equal to undefined is equal. If null equal to null is true, then nan equal to nan should be true, right? No. Boom. Nan equal to nan or nan triple equals to nan will always lead to false, which can be head scratching, but it makes sense. Why? See, on the both sides of the equality operators, you can have actual operations. For example, here you might have a function that returns an operation. Here you might have a function that returns an operation. That could result in not a number. Both of them could result in not a number. So just because they both resulted in not a number, does that mean that those functions are meant to be the same or they are equal? No. So JavaScript was like, as a fundamental rule, whenever you do an equality check with nan, it will always result in false. See, a lot of these things don't come naturally, but once you understand the nuances and the rules that ECMAScript lays, then you are able to navigate. I'm not saying you become perfect. You're able to navigate and understand and predict some of the behavior. So anything that you compare with nan will always lead to false. So how do we check nan? How do we check whether the operation or the literal is nan? Two ways. First is nan constructor, is nan method, which will first do a type conversion. For example, if you pass is nan mein xyz, string xyz, so it will try to convert into a number. If it fails, it will tell true, or it's not a number. Is nan mein you pass Keshav, it will try to convert into a number. It did not, or it's not a number, gives true. But when you give number.isnan, it will literally check for the literal isnan. So it will literally check for the literal nan. when you do number dot is none string xyz, so it is not none, it is a string, so it will give false. Literally it will check whether number dot is none में none है कि नहीं है. The function or operation must return none. If it's returning a string, then it will give you false. It only accepts the literal none as a parameter. So you can see that number dot none is more stricter, it is more predictable. Debatable ki predictable kitna hai, but still better than none. Makes sense sometimes. So here you see, these are some of the things. So this is where is none really boggles your head, because XYZ string will give true, because हाँ चलो XYZ को number में convert करने का try किया नहीं कर पाए तो none है भैया, true. But this empty string will give false. It will say यानी कि number है क्या है? No. But JavaScript कैसे काम करता है? Behind the scenes it will convert empty string into 0. तो 0 तो number है, तो is not a number तो false आ गया. True and false, they are like binary switches, 0 and 1. So behind the scenes true and false will get converted into 0 and 1. So is 0 and 1 a number? Yes. So is none will get true, false. So just use number dot is none. If you want to lead a happy life, switch to Golang and use number dot is none. Or move to any type safe language like TypeScript. Even I don't know TypeScript, but switch to a type safe language. So that is it, what we have for today. If you thought today was a head scratcher, then believe me, we're only getting started. JavaScript has a lot of quirkiness under the hood. I know your typical Saturdays are not meant for these things, but not any day is meant for these things. I did not want to pester you guys about these things on a weekday, so I just started to ruin your weekends. That's why you subscribe to me. Bye bye.